Imagine for a moment the sheer, well, unbelievable complexity of getting anything you buy, use, or consume, right? From its raw materials all the way to your hands. Think of your morning coffee or, the device you're listening on right now. It all moves through this incredibly intricate web, supply chains. It's foundational, kind of visible. But just think about the sheer volume of data, the countless decisions, the potential bottlenecks involved. It's mind-boggling, really. Today, we're taking a deep dive into how generative AI, specifically things like large language models or LLMs, is utterly transforming this whole intricate world of supply chain management.
You've really hit on the core challenge there, because even with sophisticated data-driven systems, traditional supply chain management has always, struggled a bit. Even with advanced tools giving recommendations, human planners, executives, they've historically spent a huge amount of time just trying to understand what the systems were telling them. They're constantly analyzing scenarios, running what-if analyses, trying to update these complex mathematical models because, the business environment keeps changing. And so often that meant pulling in specialized data science teams or external tech providers, which inevitably led to delays, slowed down critical decisions.
Right. Okay. And here's where it gets really interesting. Our source material, How Generative AI Improves Supply Chain Management from Harvard Business Review, it reveals how these LLMs are cutting that decision-making time from, get this, days to minutes, and dramatically boosting productivity. So our mission today is to unpack exactly how this is happening, what real benefits companies are already seeing, and what challenges still lie ahead. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Historically, companies made a huge leap, didn't they? Moving from just intuition to more automated, data-driven methods. And that certainly brought real efficiency gains, cost reductions, sure. But as you just said, those systems still got bottlenecked. That human in the loop, trying to figure out complex outputs.
Precisely. Exactly. Even with all that data, those advanced systems, planners still had to put in considerable time, effort. They needed to interpret these complex recommendations, run various scenarios just to see different outcomes, and constantly update the underlying math models to reflect, reality, changing business conditions. And like I said, this often meant pulling in specialists, data scientists, tech providers, leading to significant delays, slowing things down. That's the friction point LLMs are really designed to tackle.
Okay, so if that's the bottleneck, how exactly are LLMs stepping in? What's the core function that's, changing the game here?
Well, the core thing is that LLMs allow those very same planners, the executives, to do all these complex analytical things without needing constant external tech support. They can interact with the system using just plain language, simple English. And this is where we see that dramatic reduction in decision time going from days, even weeks, down to minutes or hours. That directly translates into, significantly increased productivity, a bigger impact on the business. It's kind of like having a data scientist and a modeler right there, instantly available.
And we're not just talking theory here, right?
Yeah.
This is already happening. Microsoft has a really compelling case study, doesn't it?
Indeed. Yeah. Microsoft piloted an LLM-based system from March to October 2023, then fully deployed it in November 2023. This system, it manages server and hardware supply for, I think, over 300 global data centers, supporting all their cloud services. It's massive. And the article notes a significant impact already on efficiency, productivity, especially things like incident response time, decision speed. And they expect those gains to grow. It's also really important to point out this isn't, tied to a specific Microsoft product. Other high-quality LLMs out there can achieve pretty similar results.
That's certainly impressive. But, if I'm listening, thinking about this for my own company, is there a risk, like over-reliance or maybe a steep learning curve that eats into those efficiency gains at first?
Yeah, those are definitely valid concerns, and we'll dig into those a bit later when we talk about the challenges, the barriers. But the core idea here is really enablement, not just replacement. The LLM acts as an accelerator. It frees up the human planners for, higher value strategic work, which interestingly actually leads to more trust in the systems and ultimately better outcomes.
Fascinating. Okay, so how does this transformation actually play out day to day for supply chain folks? The article breaks it down into 3 critical areas where LLMs are making a big difference. Let's start with the first one, data discovery and insights.
Absolutely. So this first pillar, data discovery and insights, it's really about giving planners direct, intuitive access to information. It's huge. LLMs let them ask questions in just plain language. Things like, how much raw material of type T does supplier S actually have today? Or maybe, what's the cheapest way to ship items from factory F to retailer R? The LLM then kind of acts as an interpreter. It translates these everyday questions into the precise queries the company's data repository, like a SQL database, needs. Then the answer comes back in a complete human-readable sentence. And a big benefit here, especially for sensitive data, is privacy. You can often use these LLMs as a cloud service, meaning your proprietary data doesn't actually need to be transferred out to a third party, which is key.
Wow. So essentially it's making these powerful analytics accessible to anyone who can just ask a clear question. No coding required.
Exactly. That's the power. And it goes beyond just simple questions, too. LLMs can also explain decisions made by the existing supply chain system, which is often a black box, right? And they can provide deeper insights on trends. So a planner could ask, which factory was the most productive last week? Or how many times last month did our total shipping cost go over, say, $50,000?
That's a massive shift.
Yeah.
So if the speed of just finding the data is now democratized down to minutes, does this mean strategic decisions, which maybe took weeks just to get the data for, can now be iterated on almost in real time? What does that do for competitiveness?
That's precisely the core insight. Yeah. It dramatically compresses that whole ODIA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act for supply chains. It speeds everything up. Take the demand drift problem for Microsoft's cloud operations, monitoring monthly changes in server demand plans that used to involve planners, data scientists, engineers. And it could take about a week just to analyze and summarize those shifts, the whole week. Now, with the LLM solution, it automatically generates an email report, details who made each change, why, and it even flags potential errors. Like if demand suddenly dropped, it can pinpoint the reason. Maybe they introduced more efficient hardware, for example. The impact is just staggering. Planners now do that whole analysis in minutes. That's real-time strategic response capability. And there's another really compelling example, this one from the automotive industry. An OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, they had thousands of suppliers, incredibly complex contracts, and they were just overlooking literally millions of dollars in potential savings from volume discounts buried in those contracts. Their procurement team just couldn't possibly keep track of all the nuances across so many agreements. It's too much. So by feeding the LLM data from thousands of these contracts, the system automatically identified these missed price reductions, resulting in millions of dollars in savings. So this wasn't just about speed, it was about uncovering value that was completely hidden before.
That is incredible. Going from a week to minutes, or finding millions in hidden savings just by being able to process information at that scale. Amazing. Okay, let's move to the second big benefit, answers to what-if questions.
Right. So this pillar is all about empowering that strategic decision-making, but with hypothetical scenarios, playing out possibilities. Answers to what-if questions lets LLMs tackle detailed hypothetical questions, like, what would the extra transportation cost be if overall product demand jumped by 15%? Or maybe, can we still fulfill all our demand if we have to shut down Factory F for a week? Now, what's really crucial to understand here is that the LLMs don't replace the existing mathematical optimization models. They don't do the heavy math crunching themselves. Instead, they complement them. The LLM translates the human's question into a precise rule, or what they call a constraint, like a small change in the code. That constraint then gets fed into the main supply chain optimization tool. The tool runs the new scenario, and the modified plan's output is then passed back through the LLM to produce a clear human language answer. Microsoft actually has an open source project called OptiGuide that kind of demonstrates this approach.
Okay, so it's not replacing those powerful number crunching engines, but it's making them infinitely more accessible, more agile. That sounds like a really powerful synergy. You can rapidly experiment with complex scenarios.
Exactly right. Think about Microsoft's server fulfillment plan analysis again. These plans involve really complex decisions. Which server type, which warehouse, shipping date, docking target, all trying to minimize costs. Planners used to really struggle, to understand why the optimization system made certain decisions. It could lead to days of delay, back and forth with engineers, data scientists. Now, with the LLM solution, planners can get answers in just a few minutes. Answers to questions like, what's the cost increase if we fulfill order X by the requested date versus maybe a later date? Or, what happens to costs if we deactivate warehouse Y for 1 week? Quick answers to complex questions.
From predicting hypotheticals to reacting in real time, it really does sound like a dramatic acceleration. So what's the third area, the next frontier where LLMs are making a real impact?
So the third area the article highlights is interactive planning. This is where it gets even more dynamic. Here, LLMs allow planners to directly update the supply chain mathematical models and the business requirements themselves to reflect what's happening right now. And they can also proactively update planners on changes in business conditions. So it's kind of like having an intelligent co-pilot watching things for you. For example, Imagine a manufacturing facility is suddenly down, out for 7 days because of a winter storm, say. Without an LLM, planners would typically have to engage IT data science teams. It'd be time-consuming adjustments to the S&OP, the sales and operations plan. But with an LLM, planners can just directly ask the system, generate a new plan that avoids this disrupted facility. And if the new plan can't satisfy all the forecasted demand, the LLM doesn't just stop there. It generates the updated S&OP, calculates the new costs, and it identifies exactly which demand won't be met and what the impact on profitability will be.
That is amazing. So really, no more waiting days for an IT ticket to get resolved. You're essentially just telling the system, hey, recalculate everything for this new reality.
Precisely. Or another scenario. Maybe the LLM is analyzing shipment data and it generates an alarm. Hey, supplier Z's lead time has significantly increased. It might even predict the next shipment timing based on that. The planner sees this, recognizes the negative effect on service levels, and can immediately ask the LLM, okay, rerun the planning tool with this new lead time. The LLM then generates a new plan, which might suggest things like expedited shipments or maybe transferring inventory from somewhere else to mitigate that disruption. Real-time problem solving. And looking ahead, the article envisions LLM tech supporting full end-to-end decision-making scenarios within just a few years, allowing users to describe really complex production or inventory problems just using plain language. Now, they do acknowledge a current challenge, validating that the mathematical models the LLM generates accurately represent the business situation. That's still difficult, especially as things get more complex.
Yeah, I can see that. This all sounds incredibly powerful, though, enabling these lightning-fast responses. But, like with any new technology, there are always hurdles, right? What challenges are companies facing when they try to adopt LLMs effectively in supply chain?
That's a really crucial point. And the first, often the biggest challenge is adoption and training. It's frequently not about the tech itself, it's about training the human workforce. Because LLMs require very precise language. For example, if a user asks something vague like, can we utilize factory F better? Well, what does better mean? Does it mean lower costs, higher throughput, more balanced throughput over time? Each interpretation leads to completely different decisions, different model adjustments.
Right. So the challenge shifts. It's not about training people how to code, but training them how to think clearly and articulate precisely what they need. That sounds like a fascinating, maybe difficult reskilling effort.
Absolutely, it really is. The solution involves pretty rigorous training. Planners need to learn how to ask precise, unambiguous questions. And managers, executives too, they need proper schooling on what LLMs can do, but just as importantly, what their limitations are, where they might go wrong. There's a great quote in the article from Sasha Palikov at Dell Technologies. She says, training our human workforce to ask the right questions of generative AI is proving to be more of a challenge than the technology itself. And she emphasizes that developing leaders who really understand how to manage AI, how to integrate it, is critical. Then the second major barrier is verification. We touched on this briefly. LLMs can occasionally produce wrong outputs. They can hallucinate, as they say. So companies absolutely must have ways to keep the technology inside the rails, basically, to identify mistakes when they happen and recover from them quickly. Current solutions involve things like feeding the LLM lots of rich domain-specific examples to improve its accuracy in that specific context, and also adding mechanisms for when it gets a query it just can't handle, like having a default answer. Unfortunately, I cannot help with this question. Here's the list of supported questions. Something like that. But this raises a really important area for ongoing research. Verifying accuracy gets much, much harder with more complex outputs. Like if an LLM generates an entire mathematical program from scratch, how do you confirm that's correct? That's still an active area of development.
Yeah, makes sense. So beyond the technical hurdles and the training, how do these LLMs actually change the roles, the jobs of people working in supply chains? If so much can be automated, what's left for human intelligence and intuition?
This is where it gets really significant, I think, and actually quite exciting. As LLM technology leads to, well, a high degree of automation, the roles of planners, executives, they will change dramatically. Instead of spending their days bogged down in time-consuming, error-prone, frankly, often repetitive tasks, planners will start using LLMs to generate more insights, to explain the recommendations coming from their planning technology. And this interaction, this ability to understand the why, will naturally lead to greater user trust and ultimately better adoption of the tools. For instance, think about procurement. Employees will spend far less time actually generating standard contracts because LLMs can help design them. And the LLM can even provide detailed supplier performance data right alongside, helping executives choose the most appropriate supplier or contract terms. If we zoom out a bit, connect this to the bigger picture. A workforce using these LLM-based tools is going to shift away from day-to-day repeated tasks towards truly value-added activities. And what does that mean? It means more strategic thinking. And crucially, it means increased collaboration, both internally across different functional areas and externally with suppliers and customers. This might be the most paradigm-shifting insight, actually. LLMs remove the information barriers, the communication friction that previously made that kind of deep cross-functional work really difficult, if not impossible.
Okay, so it's not just about doing the old tasks faster, it's about unlocking entirely new ways of working together, new collaborations that just weren't feasible before because the data was stuck in silos. How might that actually look, practically speaking?
Yeah, exactly. A really concrete example of this new collaboration could be, say, demand planners working really closely with trade planners, the people responsible for marketing promotions, pricing strategies, working together to understand the precise impact of a planned trade promotion or a price change on the demand forecast. This type of deep cross-functional collaboration often just doesn't happen in most organizations today. Why? Because the data is all over the place, the models are separate and complex, communication is siloed between departments. LLMs can bridge that gap. They can integrate that information, facilitate that conversation. Now, the challenge here, of course, is for leadership. They need to actively work to break down those existing organizational silos and probably modify some business processes to really enable this new level of collaboration. It requires organizational change, too.
We've covered a lot of ground. We've seen how generative AI is really not just another buzzword, is it? It's a powerful tool, cutting through the immense complexity of supply chains, speeding up decisions massively, uncovering hidden value, and, maybe most importantly, fundamentally reshaping how teams can work together.
That's right. If we connect it all back, LLM-based technology looks set to really transform supply chain management by significantly enhancing efficiency, yes, but also resiliency, productivity, and accuracy. And it's key to remember, it doesn't just replace existing technologies, it complements them. It allows planners that direct, intuitive interaction with their sophisticated tools, often without needing data scientists or engineers constantly looking over their shoulder. This is going to automate a significant number of existing supply chain processes, for sure. And it will probably even create entirely new ones, like by integrating processes, say trade planning and demand forecasting, which often operate in near isolation today.
So, is the ultimate vision here something like a truly integrated, maybe almost a closed-loop supply chain system, where functions like trade planning, supply chain operations, maybe even finance, are all collaborating seamlessly, working off a single, unified plan that meets all the business and financial goals?
That really seems to be the promise, yes. The potential for LLM-based technology here is just immense. It could genuinely revolutionize supply chain management, maybe within just the next few years, and make that kind of integrated closed-loop vision much closer to reality.
So wrapping up, what does this all mean for you listening right now? As this technology continues to evolve rapidly, it's worth considering how this shift away from mundane tasks towards more strategic thinking and deep cross-functional collaboration might reshape not just supply chains, but really any information-heavy industry you interact with. Think about it. What traditional processes in your world, your work, could benefit from this kind of AI-driven overhaul, freeing up human potential, your potential, for the truly creative, collaborative, strategic work? It really feels like moving from just answering what happened to constantly being able to ask and answer what if, and crucially, what should we do next?